What if I told you that one movie just shattered nearly every prediction Hollywood analysts made and came within inches of breaking one of the biggest box office records of all time? When the first projections for Spider-Man Brand New Day started appearing, most experts believed the film would have a strong launch, but no one expected what happened next. Instead of simply becoming another successful Marvel release, this movie completely rewrote the conversation around superhero films, crushed expectations by hundreds of millions of dollars, and proved that audiences are still willing to flood theaters if the movie is good enough. Even more surprising, this opening has exposed a harsh reality for Disney's Marvel Studios. While recent MCU films have struggled to generate excitement, Spider-Man has accomplished something that many thought was impossible, raising serious questions about the future of Marvel's biggest franchise. We're breaking down the record-breaking numbers, why almost every prediction turned out to be wrong, and what this could mean for the future of the MCU. But before we jump in, if you enjoy Hollywood news, Marvel updates, box office breakdowns, and the biggest entertainment stories every single day, make sure to subscribe to Subiverse and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. From the day Spider-Man Brand New Day was officially announced, one thing seemed almost guaranteed. It was going to be a major box office event. After all, this is the direct follow-up to Spider-Man No Way Home, a film that came incredibly close to earning $2 billion worldwide, despite never receiving a theatrical release in China. Naturally, expectations were already sky high. At the same time, there were also reasons to believe this sequel might face a tougher challenge. Unlike No Way Home, this film didn't have the massive nostalgia factor of bringing together Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and multiple generations of Spider-Man fans. That crossover event created a level of excitement that's incredibly difficult to recreate. Because of that, many analysts believed Brand New Day would still perform extremely well, but perhaps not reach the same level of cultural phenomenon. Early industry projections reflected that uncertainty. Some analysts predicted a domestic opening well above $300 million, while worldwide estimates gradually climbed toward $800 million. Those numbers immediately sparked debate across the entertainment industry. Personally, even an opening near $600 million worldwide would have been considered an enormous success. It would have placed the movie among the biggest superhero launches ever and positioned it perfectly for an incredible theatrical run. But once projections started approaching $800 million, many people wondered if expectations had become a little too ambitious. As it turns out, they weren't ambitious enough. When the official opening weekend numbers began arriving, Spider-Man Brand New Day didn't just meet expectations, it completely destroyed them. Instead of opening within the range most analysts predicted, the film delivered one of the most explosive global debuts the industry has ever witnessed. The final estimates stunned Hollywood. Spider-Man Brand New Day opened to an incredible $927 million worldwide during its very first weekend in theaters. That's not just a successful launch, that's a historic one. For comparison, many trade publications were forecasting a worldwide debut somewhere between $450 and $465 million. Those estimates already suggested the movie would be a blockbuster. Instead, the actual result ended up being hundreds of millions of dollars higher than nearly every major projection. That's an astonishing difference. Even the more optimistic predictions that placed the film around $800 million worldwide turned out to underestimate just how enormous audience demand really was. In just 3 days, Brand New Day established itself as one of the biggest box office stories Hollywood has ever seen. And once the domestic numbers started coming in, the picture became even more remarkable. As the international totals continued climbing, attention quickly shifted to one question. How close did Spider-Man Brand New Day come to making box office history in the United States? The answer surprised almost everyone. Early estimates placed the film at an astonishing $355 million domestic opening, putting it within striking distance of Avengers, Endgame's legendary opening weekend record. At the time these numbers were reported, final Sunday totals had not yet been officially confirmed, meaning the figure could still move slightly higher or slightly lower once Sony released its finalized report. But regardless of the final adjustment, one thing had already become clear. Spider-Man Brand New Day had delivered one of the biggest opening weekends the industry has ever seen. The estimated breakdown was just as impressive. The film generated roughly $355 million domestically, while international markets contributed approximately $572 million, pushing the global debut to an extraordinary $927 million worldwide. Those aren't ordinary blockbuster numbers. Those are the kind of figures that completely reshape industry expectations. Naturally, final totals are always adjusted once studios complete their official weekend count, but minor revisions won't change the overall story. This launch has already secured its place among the most successful opening weekends in cinema history. And perhaps the biggest takeaway isn't simply how much money the film earned, it's what those numbers say about the current state of moviegoing. For years, we've heard the same arguments repeated over and over again. People claim that superhero fatigue has taken over. Others argue that audiences no longer care about comic book movies. Some even insist that streaming has permanently changed viewing habits and that theaters will never return to their former strength. But when a film like Spider-Man: Brand New Day arrives and produces numbers like these, those arguments become much harder to defend. Because if audiences truly had no interest in superhero movies anymore, how do you explain an opening weekend approaching $1 billion worldwide? The reality may be much simpler. It isn't that people have stopped caring about superheroes. People have stopped showing up for movies they don't believe are worth seeing. When audiences trust a character, when they believe the story matters, and when excitement builds naturally through positive anticipation, they'll still pack theaters in massive numbers. That's exactly what happened here. Of course, context is important. Comparisons with older records should always consider inflation. Ticket prices today are significantly higher than they were several years ago. Premium formats like IMAX, Dolby Cinema, 4DX, and other premium experiences also increase average ticket prices compared to previous generations of moviegoing. Those factors absolutely deserve to be acknowledged. But even after taking all of that into account, it doesn't change the bigger picture. Spider-Man: Brand New Day has officially delivered one of the largest theatrical openings ever recorded, and that's something very few films in history can claim. This performance also creates an uncomfortable comparison for Marvel Studios, because while Spider-Man is breaking records around the world, many of Marvel's recent releases have struggled to generate anything close to this level of excitement. In fact, what's happened over this opening weekend put several recent MCU projects into a very different perspective. The amount of money Brand New Day generated in just a few days comes remarkably close to the combined theatrical performance of multiple recent Marvel films. That's a staggering contrast. It highlights just how powerful the Spider-Man brand remains, and at the same time, it raises serious questions about why other MCU projects haven't been able to create the same level of audience enthusiasm. And that's where the conversation becomes even more interesting, because despite Spider-Man being one of Marvel's biggest characters, Disney doesn't actually own the film rights. That relationship changes everything. What makes this story even more fascinating is that Spider-Man isn't actually owned by Disney. While Peter Parker is part of the MCU, the film rights still belong to Sony Pictures. Disney and Sony share the character under a partnership, meaning Sony distributes the films while Marvel Studios help shape the creative direction. That makes the success even more significant. Because while several recent Marvel films have struggled at the box office, Spider-Man: Brand New Day is delivering the kind of numbers the MCU hasn't seen in years. In fact, this opening weekend alone puts the performance of several recent Marvel releases into perspective. Whether you're looking at Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, or Captain America, Brand New Day is already closing the gap in just a matter of days. It also proves one important point. Audiences haven't given up on superhero movies. They've simply become more selective. If fans trust the character, enjoy the story, and believe the movie is worth watching, they'll still show up in massive numbers. Spider-Man continues to have that advantage. Personally, I wasn't always the biggest fan of Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, but No Way Home completely changed that. By the end of that movie, Peter Parker had finally gone through real loss, real sacrifice, and genuine character growth. For the first time, it truly felt like the beginning of Spider-Man's next chapter. And that's exactly why so many people were excited for Brand New Day. After watching Brand New Day, I can honestly say I enjoyed it. Is it perfect? No. There are a few plot points that feel rushed and some questions the movie never fully answers. The third act also has a few issues, especially when it comes to one of the villains. That's something Marvel has struggled with for years. Even so, the overall experience works. The action is entertaining, Tom Holland delivers another strong performance, and the emotional moments land much better than I expected. More importantly, audiences seem to agree. Positive word of mouth has spread quickly, and that's one of the biggest reasons this movie exploded far beyond its original projections. Remember, some early reports suggested an $800 million global opening sounded unrealistic. Instead, the film blew past that number and came incredibly close to a $1 billion opening weekend. At this point, the road to $2 billion worldwide looks very realistic. The movie is performing strongly across international markets, including China, and with very little major competition over the next couple of weeks, Spider-Man has a clear opportunity to continue dominating the global box office. Now, the big question is this: can Brand New Day actually finish ahead of Avengers? Doomsday? That would be an incredible outcome, especially considering Spider-Man reportedly had a much smaller production budget than some of Marvel's recent blockbuster projects. If that happens, it won't just be a huge win for Sony. It will send a very clear message about what audiences want from superhero movies going forward. So what do you think? Has Spider-Man Brand New Day already become the biggest movie of the year, or do you think Avengers Doomsday will eventually take that crown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.